So I'm very happy that we will have the same structure of a conversation to a topic that is very dear to me. So arts and culture also in the Arab world is a very, very important topic in general during the seminars at the forum of the MEM Summer Summit. So I'm very happy that we can conclude today's conversations with a topic that is Prognosis, Saudi Arabia, an artist's perspective. And the artist is a very well-known artist, even at the MEM Summer Summit. We had the pleasure and honor of having the Saudi artist Ahmed already connected from Saudi last edition. So ahla sahla, Ahmed. Very happy to have you here, but please do promise to come to Lugano next time. We're really ahla sahla daiman bi Lugano. I'm very honored to have live here on stage today Stapleton. He's an artist as well. He's a social entrepreneur and the founding director of Edge of Arabia. Ahla sahla, willkommen, because he's also talking my language, Norwegian. So very happy to have this interactive conversation here today. The floor and the conversation is among you two. Please.
Thank you so much. Okay, it works. I've got multiple bits of technology. I've got my slide, my microphone, and I've got my slides here on my iPhone. First of all, we haven't met before, but I've come yesterday from Norway, and I don't think I've ever met a half Norwegian who also works in Saudi. So I feel really comfortable with you, Diana, and Ahmed, who's also been to Saudi. So we have a connection there. I know everybody's tired, so we're going to end with a very visual and hopefully kind of stimulating end to the seminar, to the summit. And we're going to talk about Prognosis Saudi Arabia, which is an art project, and I believe Ahmed introduced it last year. And Diana, please feel free to interject and ask questions. And I want to say, Ahmed, hello, from here to Riyadh. Can we hear you?
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, great. That was just a test.
Right.
Very.
I'm just laughing because I see myself on the screen, so...
Yeah, I saw the picture of this last year with Ahmed on one of these strange TVs, and I remember thinking it looks like a piece of contemporary art. So, and Ahmed and I often laugh that contemporary art sometimes looks like just technology arranged in a strange way. So we thought we would start with, oh, excellent, it works. Because Ahmed and I have known each other for a very long time, so we thought to introduce each other that I would introduce him, and then he would introduce me. So I'm going to start off with a brief introduction to Ahmed. So Ahmed was born in Tabuk in northwestern Saudi Arabia, which, if you don't know, is now the area near Neom, which many of you may have seen the adverts that have recently been released about this futuristic city. It's just where the photograph in the middle hits Saudi Arabia on this map. He then moved to Asir in the south of Saudi Arabia, which is very green and fertile, and he had a very rural upbringing, and his mother was a painter of Gat al-Asiri murals. If you've seen them, these murals that are painted on the insides of houses, brightly colored in the south. He then moved to school to Abha, the regional capital, where I guess we'll talk about it later, but he was part of that generation that was exposed to a more radical and extreme form of Islam, and the jihadis coming back from Afghanistan were particularly kind of influential to his generation, and in his school he was exposed to that. But he found two alternative paths, I think. One was medicine. He studied medicine, and then he started to engage with art through a little arts village called Al-Miftaha in Abha. We met actually in 2003 in Saudi. This map that you see is actually a route that I took as an artist across the region, and I met him at the Al Miftah Arts Village. You see me there in the blue keffiyeh, and this National Geographic was the National Geographic from that time, which was called Kingdom on Edge because it was straight after the Gulf War. And since then, we've collaborated for 20 years, kept our friendship, and done many projects together. In 2012, he moved to Jeddah, where he started a project called Desert of Faran, which I advise you all to look up, which was a massive record of the transformation of the city of Mecca into a more sort of commercial vision. He then moved to Riyadh in 2017 and was invited to become part of the leadership team to imagine a new cultural awakening in Saudi Arabia. He was personally invited by the Crown Prince and moved from art to sort of cultural diplomacy or cultural production. And now he's joining us from his new studio in Jax, in the Diriyah area where you worked, Diana, in Riyadh. And that's just a brief introduction. Ahmed, don't take anywhere near as long as me, because this is about you. But if you can just give a very short introduction to me.
Of course. Stephen, usually I like to say artist and teacher. When I meet Stephen in Abha, in the south region of Saudi Arabia, he was traveling from Yemen, crossing the border with the bus, with a lot of workers coming. So that was first things that inspired me, like, why you come now in the most difficult time, and you know, it's like a crazy time to travel. It was a lot of problems with the borders and all of the place. So I think art was the first connection. We just doesn't know each other, but through art we connect. Even my English was very, very little. So that in this case, it's built something like a friendship. I know more about what's happening there in the world, in the art, and I share it with him what we are doing here. And from that, like what Stephen said, it's built fantastic friendship, plus this kind of movement that we created, which became a big project called Edge of Arabia. And it was like the movement of voice of artists, or the grassroots movement of artists from different places that we connect, and we built many exhibitions around the world during all of this 20 years, plus many projects. So I think this is something I usually like to say about Stephen, artist and teacher, but also the founder of Edge of Arabia as well.
Thank you, Ahmed. Okay, that was good. He was shorter than me. So we're here to talk about this project. It's called Prognosis Saudi Arabia. It's going to be a book. He announced it last year. We announce it every year, but it's definitely being released next September, 100%. There's a reason why it's been delayed. It's a complicated book in terms of the subject matter and the production. But it's more than a book. It's an archive of 40 years of Ahmed's life and experience set against the backdrop of socio-politics from Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia in connection with the rest of the world. And it's an artist's view on history. And I know a lot of you are diplomats and looking at strategy and policy. I and Ahmed are very big believers that there is a place for artists at the table of policymaking and strategy. Artists can be the antenna of a society. Artists they are trained to imagine what other people can't imagine. Now, often they can't articulate that in KPIs and a clever strategy document with great language, but they do have this important role to play, especially now in this moment of climate change, of health emergency, and in Saudi Arabia of a great transformation. So Ahmed and I are both involved in trying to be part of that, and this book, I believe, will be one of the most important art projects coming out of the Middle East in the 21st century. It's a little bit prejudiced that I say that because I am the editor. But Gilles Capel also is writing the introduction. And so I'm going to start off just quickly by Ahmed saying, you chose this image as the cover. And I remember when you first showed it to me, it's an extraordinary image. Could you just tell us about why you chose this image and what does it depict?
Yes, first of all, when I was usually interested about archives. Archives tell us a lot of stories, not about what's happening in the past, but also it's the real connection for the future. So it's important that when I find this image and I bought it, I couldn't believe that. First of all, this is a real picture. It doesn't manipulated by any Photoshop. It's an old picture. And this was a meeting on the table. It's kind of a strategy and KPIs like what you said. But it's for me kind of 12 people on the table, and was to nationalize Aramco company, which is the oil company in Saudi Arabia, to become Saudi Arabia. So it has this role in the historical moment. For me, it's like Last Supper. It reminds me of the Last Supper. So for some reason, it's the table, the meeting, and we throw all of the things in the book on this table, and we started as a story.
Excellent.
The book also called Prognosis, because this name connected to this photo, because I came from a medical background. I studied medicine and I graduated as a medical doctor. I chose my career in the life to be an artist after that. So prognosis in medicine means the outcome of anything is the future. It's what the outcome of what happened. So the book have this kind of archival research.
Excellent. I think just to reiterate, when I first saw it, I thought, did they decide to create The Last Supper? Did they decide to copy the famous painting? And if so, why? But this seminal moment of the handover back from the Americans to the Saudis of the control of the world's most valuable resource that changed the entire world is not a public image. Ahmed bought it from an auction. He bought the negative. So this was interesting for us that an artist discovered this seminal moment, and then there's so much meaning in it. So Ahmed, I also wanted to ask you, with Desert of Faran, your project about Mecca, you chose photography as a medium in order to capture the scale of the development. But for this project, you've chosen collage. And this is an example of one of the first pages in the book that I'd like you first to talk about why you chose collage as a medium, but also then to talk about this sort of introductory image.
Yes, I think the idea of collage in this book is work very perfectly to navigate through the history by real text, sound, video, because through this 40 years, there is a lot of changing happening in the media of presenting any news for us. So starting from TV, from cassette, from VHS, through TV and satellite, which become a powerful things, then internet live, then after that, social media. All of this connection has a big role in different socio-political, life around us. And through the book, we can see how they use it and how this was the real source. So the book using archive because it shows you the reality of anything's happening within the medium that we receive it.
Great, and maybe just very briefly describe, I know you're in this picture on the bottom right, looking very innocent with your brother, but maybe you can just describe why this means so much to you, this particular collage.
Yes, this collage is very important. It's for Abha in the back. This is from Asiri region, my tribe. This is the traditional dress that we usually wear. So with the Prince Khalid al Faisal in the middle, he was one of the first people who really help a lot in allowing, us to have a place for art and music and things. And that was difficult time because with the extreme Islam on that time, which is called the Islamic awakenings, there were a lot of abandoning for many things. And the book started with this story, which started 1979, and until today, the story. So within the book, you will see all of these stories happening, but through document, archive, personal story from my perspective as an artist, but it can reflect in many of my generation in the region.
Great. And I'm just going to explain for the audience here the structure of the book. So you see the way that we've, there are three main threads running through. One is a diary. The beginning of each decade starts with a personal recollection of his 1 to 10 years, teenage years, and you see that there. The second is a historical timeline, and the third is his artwork. And this project actually started in the art world. They ask you to do something called a mid-career book. And Ahmed got this publisher, came to him and said, we've got to do a mid-career book. And he started to think, that's so not appropriate for the way I look at my work. And what you'll see later, what's really interesting is the way that Ahmed chooses to place his artwork not in a conventional way of chronology, but where it connects with a moment in history. And Ahmed, I'm just going to skip one slide forward. And is this working? Oh, now I've gone back. That was hang on a second. Now I've shown the Trump image, which was meant to be a surprise. Ahmed, could you, we have these three sections, but then as we were working on the book, these two really interesting kind of other threads emerged. You've talked about the technology, but also these characters that are coming through different types of technology. Can you talk a little bit to that?
Yes, it's imagine this life like a film, and when we see the character on the TV or hear them on the cassette or see it in the VHS or in internet after a time, and then more on that in the social media. So I try to find the source of influence that come to our visual memory and how it's also reflected in our life socio-politically and in geography around us. For example, you see on the left side above the photo of, for example, 79, the Iranian Revolution. For example, the cassette was a big thing, which is, they say sometimes revolution that happened with one cassette, for example. You can see the VHS that was on the school, they give it us in the school when during the Soviet Afghan war in the 80s, and they say, let's support our brother in Afghanistan. So it was more as a support in the beginning. You can see, for example, the TV, especially the satellite, when Al Jazeera come with the famous photo for Ibn Laden with the horse, which is kind of in the old age with the horse. So it's like a propaganda. It's kind of propaganda of how we see things and how we believe in things. So I use this language to build a narrative through the history. We believe, or let's say, the history comments in us, but I try to comment in the history as well. So it's a dialogue.
And then this image, which when I first saw it, I couldn't quite believe it. I was in Riyadh, and there was an exhibition organized for President Trump's first visit to Saudi Arabia. And for me, it seemed like this is where diary, history, artwork, character, and technology all kind of collide in the book. And what we saw in the last chapter was that Ahmed's life started to collide with history again and again and again. The technology reference is actually the guy just checking his phone, but that was the last one. But it was extraordinary because this was just after President Trump had announced the Muslim ban. So the image spoke, very powerfully to, I think, a Muslim audience watching the visit. Ahmed, I know we've not got much time, so I'm going to move forward. Maybe, Diana, you tell me how much time I've got left.
10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay, great. So we're just going to whiz through the 4 chapters of the book. We want to just give you a little visual taste, and we'll stop at certain pages, and Ahmed can tell you the narrative behind them. The book begins actually just before 1979 in Saudi Arabia. And maybe, Ahmed, you can talk about this page that just sets up the dramatic events of 1979.
Yes, I find a lot of photograph and a lot of advertisement in the magazine and then a photograph from the school of the girls. Like life was more positive about more opening to the life. So with the many things that disappear after this year, which is the 79 in Saudi Arabia. So the book started in 79 until 2020. I born in 79, so we chose this as a landmark for the book, which is the seismic year that everything changed, really. It was very important that we started with this photo, 79, where was Mecca under the siege of extremism from Saudi Arabia. So it was 2 weeks under all of the extremism. So it's called the Siege of Mecca, famous. And this is make a lot of influence in the Saudi community, which that influence, we can say it make people lost the confidence. Government as well. There was loss of confidence for development. Then where this is, after that, they start very conservative about music and TV. You will see a lot of slowly on the education for women. All of these issues that we face it in our society here was, back to this time. And this is what the voice of community or my generation usually say about this moment.
And Ahmed, I'm just going to jump because I don't want to miss the chance to get all the way to the last chapter, but
yes,
just to show the audience here. So this is an example of where an artwork is placed in history. So this artwork, which when it was presented at the British Museum, was presented around old artifacts, and it's a very beautiful depiction of Mecca. But Ahmed chose to link it to 1979 when Mecca was emptied for the first time because of the siege, which was a very tense moment in the history of Mecca. So it's just an example, but I just wanted to show that. And Ahmed, so we can get to the next chapter, I'm just going to go through other pages. Yeah. So
yes, the book will go through different historical events. Yeah, the book will go through different historical movement that's happening in 79. For example, Iranian Revolution. Then we'll go with when the Iraq, Saddam Hussein became ruling the Iraq at that time, invasion of Afghanistan. Then it will come to a nice story after that. And for example, Maradona, when he played in Saudi Arabia in one of the club at that time, and people went crazy because he paid a lot. And they thought this is something shouldn't happen. It should go to support the Muslims and community. So all of this historical movement, I take and put it together. Also very important because by the end of this decade, 89, when Salman Rushdie released his book, it was a big, big news. Same times the news was happening when the Cold War ended. So we thought that with this fatwa from Khomeini, they want to grab the attention of Islamic awakening to his side. And I think that's worked at that time. So the book will describe with a lot of documents, a lot of historical events. This is, for example, the first decade. Then we move to the second decade with the Gulf War. Gulf War make a lot of expose Saudi Arabia from inside to the Arab world. Then that's start another reason for starting a new era. At that time, the satellite became the big thing, whereas some of religious people start to say satellite is haram, not allowed. while the CNN became the star of the Gulf War at that time, for example. So we will take this conflict between what's happening inside, what's happening outside, and we'll see it visually, using a lot of grab from TV, satellite at that moment, and telling the story. For example, you can see here is the diversity of both sides. Here, for example, this famous photo on TV where is the people pray while they are wearing masks because they are aware from using chemical weapons from Iraq at that time. Then, yes, this is also for us very important things when America brought the first burger in Saudi Arabia, which was called Wolf Burger, with the American soldier in Saudi Arabia at that time. After that, with 1 year, McDonald's entered Saudi Arabia. You can see the next slide after that.
People don't know
this
that.
Is a photo.
The first fast food kind of chain in the Gulf was Wolf Burger, which was the American Army burger chain. And it wasn't too soon after that that the first McDonald's came, but it was all the American Army bases that were set up during the Second Gulf War. So actually, Ahmed, also we found this archive footage of the first McDonald's being put in Riyadh. Ahmed, we haven't got much. This may seem a little bit out of place, but maybe you can quickly explain why this is in the book.
No, it's through the 90s. Our time was crazy to find the uncut film. So this was one of the films that we find, like there was a military base and there was a crazy to piece by the film of Basic Instinct because our generation was crazy to see what this scene. So I added to the book as one of the memory of a crazy time for how we was crazy about the American films and what will come. Everything in the book has a metaphor for something or for movement or for influence that happened after a lot of evidence.
And I think what's interesting for this context of policy and strategy is the artist acts as a mirror sometimes to the experience of a generation. And that mirror, when things are moving so fast, actually is very important, I think, as a role generally in society for writers and poets to act as that reflective back to themselves. And I think in Saudi Arabia right now, there is such a speed, and in the Gulf generally, of development that no one really takes the time to see when history repeats itself or when, moments from the past can help inform a decision for the future. Ahmed, we're really running out of time, so I'm going to just flick through and you can talk as the slides go. This is I think this one might be running out of battery.
Anyway, the idea for the third chapter is important because 2000 and 2001 was a new era with internet became something in Saudi Arabia. And after that, also the 11th September in New York, which Saudi Arabia exposed to all of the world. And the media was very, the Saudi media was very slow. So everything was crazy from outside. Internet was a big window in the world for us. And that's storytelling the story. And the 2011 or 2010 and 11, it's the social time media, where the Arab Spring became the story, and they use Facebook and all of the social media as tools for communication. And I come back now to the archive of modernity, of social media. It's full of archive. Every story is there. So with connecting all of this together, I be able to build a subjective story in the book to tell what's happening everywhere and how it influenced, because we became together. What's happening in Tunisia, I can hear it in the same time. What's happening in Egypt, I know my friends, I can ask them in the same time. So I put all of this in the narrative here and continue more and more in the telling the story.
I don't know if we want to mention this, it's out in the news, just to end on a very positive note for us personally. Many of you may know the story of Ashraf Fayyad, the Palestinian poet who was actually sentenced to death back in 2015 and has been in jail for the last 7 years. He was released 2 days ago, which is the reason why Ahmed is not with us here today. So it's out on some media, but it's not out on the big media. But for us, this was a part of our group of artists. And going back to the last conversation about the interpretation of Islam, he was sent to jail for a book that he wrote that was interpreted as promoting atheism and apostasy under a previous kind of ideology, dominant ideology in Saudi Arabia. I know we've run out of time, Ahmed. I'm just going to go to the very last page of the book and leave the last word to Ahmed. And thank you very much, Ahmed. I'll be back in Saudi soon. Sorry, Deanna, I didn't have any questions for you, or we ran out of time. As usual, artists normally have way too many images for presentations like this. So a last word to you, Ahmed.
Tfaddal, Ahmed.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think the book here is kind of a graphic novel to tell a subjective story, and I try as much as I can to have everything that can have a shared or common ground for everyone to share with me what's happening in the story. And within this kind of archival is very important, because when we know this archive, we'll know future more. So it's a prognosis. That's why prognosis is the outcome of what's happening. It's the future. And I learned a lot from this book, and I still learn, So I hope you will see the book soon and hear a lot from you. And thank you so much for listening and being with you today.
شكرا كثير أحمد. Thank you so much. شكرا يعني من لوغانو لرياض. أهلا وسهلا دائما. شكرا as well. Tusen tack, Stephen, for joining this conversation that is rounding up and really giving a message of hope that arts and culture not only do things nicer and more beautiful, but that there's always a deep reasoning behind it. So thank you so much, and very curious to see the book published. Good luck. Ahla sahla. So please, thank you.